So I got involved in the environmental health movement in the very early 1980s. My mother had been diagnosed with cancer and had been given just a year to live. And she survived, but subsequently was diagnosed with 2 other forms of cancer. And by the time I was in my early 20s, I really wanted to find out what was causing cancer, and specifically what was causing my mother's cancer. I did a doctorate at Oxford University in biochemistry because I really wanted to understand how toxic chemicals and radiation exposures play a role in causing cancer. When I started nursing my son, I realized he would be receiving toxic chemicals through the milk. And although I understood that at a scientific level, understanding it at an emotional level was completely different. We all have toxic chemicals in our bodies. You, me, our children. The rise of the US environmental health movement looks at the movement, first of all, from a historical perspective. It traces the historical, the cultural, and the ideological roots of the US environmental health movement. And then it looks at the movement today, and it looks at the groups that comprise the movement today. And more importantly, it looks at the strategies and the approaches that the movement is using and why it's being so successful. The movement was born in 1978 when Lois Gibbs, who was at that time a 28-year-old housewife, found out that her house and the school that her kids were going to were sitting on top of a toxic waste dump, and that her kids were getting sick. And she got concerned, as would any parent, that the toxic wastes were causing her kids illnesses. So she went round her neighbours and got them to sign a petition and began to organise them. And that was how the environmental health movement got started. And since then, since 1978, it's become a national phenomenon and even international, and has spread worldwide. The US environmental health movement has been incredibly successful in its 35-year lifetime. It's passed a lot of legislation, and I'm hopeful that the movement can continue to grow and continue to be successful. Environmentally related diseases can be prevented if there is the political will. I'd like people to realize how their health is affected by environmental quality. I'd like them to join the environmental health movement and organize and demand legislation that will safeguard our health from toxic chemicals and from other environmental hazards. That's really why I wrote my book.